Emmetropia is a term that describes an optical state of the eyes where distant objects appear clear with no focusing effort at all. The word comes from Greek and literally means eyes with ideal measure. So being able to see distant objects clearly with no effort at all. In photographing the foothills of Alberta, clear distance sight is an obvious advantage. As you will learn in the Introduction to Human Vision course, emmetropia, or neutral sightedness, has its advantages over farsightedness or nearsightedness. Let's have a look at how this works. With the eyes set to a distant gaze, collimated or focused light lands perfectly on the retina for a clear image. The focusing system in the eye is mostly relaxed. When focusing is engaged, it can have only one effect, and that is to bring the far point of focus nearer, and so this renders distant objects blurry. In the real world, we don't really notice this as it happens so quickly and our brains accommodate for the blurred background. But this is a typical example of what we would see if we were paying attention to what was going on. Let's have a quick look at myopia, or nearsightedness. If you're lucky enough, you can see sights like this with great clarity and with no help at all. If you're nearsighted, or myopic, distant objects will appear blurry while near objects are clear. How does all this work? In emmetropia, or neutral sightedness, distant objects appear clear with no focusing effort of the eyes. When we pull focus forward, this brings our far point of focus on the horizon to a point nearer to us, leaving the background blurred. In myopia, or nearsightedness, the far point of focus is already closer than the horizon. Near objects naturally appear clear to our eyes, while the distance remains blurred. Any focusing effort still pulls the far point of focus nearer to us, and this makes distant objects appear even more blurred. In myopia, the eyes are naturally tuned to the near distance, where we tend to learn, read, and play. Children who have low to moderate myopia appear to have a distinct advantage in school, as they experience much less near-tasking strain than those with the equivalent hyperopia or farsightedness. While myopia may have its benefits in the classroom, progressive myopia is increasing worldwide, to the point that it is being called a global epidemic. Progressive and high myopia can lead to extreme binocular vision concerns and health risks, including blindness. There are solutions for progressive myopia. It can be slowed and risks minimized. Learn more about myopia and treatments for it at visionmechanic.net. Thanks for watching. Hyperopia, or farsightedness, is a common refractive state where sight is naturally tuned to a point beyond the horizon. Relaxing the eyes leads to mild to severe blur, but especially at near distances. But the impact of farsightedness is much broader than a simple matter of blur. Let's have a look at how farsightedness works. If you are neutrally sighted, what is called emmetropic, images land clearly on light receptor cells in the retina. This is done with no effort. Focusing effort brings the far point of focus nearer to us so we can view close objects clearly. If you are hyperopic or farsighted, focusing effort is already needed simply to view distant objects clearly, and this means that there is a constant strain in viewing any object. When viewing near objects, there's an additional strain added simply to bring the far point of focus closer to view clearly at a close distance. Hyperopia does diminish in time in most children, but for many, they struggle with enough focusing strain that it leads to serious medical and behavioral concerns. The strain of hyperopia is made worse with closer proximity to the target. The effects and impact of even low to moderate hyperopia in computer-based classrooms will often be misdiagnosed as common behavior and learning concerns. There is currently no requirement for comprehensive assessment or management of vision prior to prescribing medical treatments. Learn more about refractive states and why they are so important to behavior and development at visionmechanic.net. Thanks for watching. Let's take a quick look at astigmatism, also known as toricity or cylinder. In the real world, optical lenses that are spherical are of no practical use to us intelligent human beings. Looking through a spherical crystal ball, for example, does little to clear up what we see. Reading through spherical lenses would be next to impossible. Ideally, the optics of the eyes should be roughly aspheric, more like a satellite dish than a basketball. This allows the eyes and the dish to focus light energy onto a very fine point for best signal clarity. In most human eyes, there is a slight folding of the aspheric optics, so that there are two curves, one steep and one flatter. The steep curve bends light more than the flatter curve. The result is that an image is not projected clearly from edge to edge on a single clear plane inside the eye, but rather is smeared across or between two planes of focus. This folded optical state is called astigmatism or toricity and is neutralized by use of a cylinder lens with the opposing optical properties. Astigmatism causes blur and a constant need to focus and refocus. The muscle strain is felt behind the eyes and in the forehead. Let's see how astigmatism works. In neutral sightedness or emmetropia, the eye sees perfectly well at distance with no focusing effort at all. Focusing effort by the ciliary body pulls focus nearer to us and leaves distant objects more blurred. The focused image should always land flat on a single plane of focus. In astigmatism, there are two planes of focus, and so the image is never clear, not all at once. If one part of the image is brought into focus, the remaining portion of the image slips into blur. This process of moving focus near and far to find perfect clarity becomes tiring and continues on through the day as a continuing additional strain. People with astigmatism literally never get a break. In the classroom and at the work desk, even low to moderate levels of astigmatism will lead to ongoing nagging strain, especially when viewing high-definition targets like computer screens and text. For the child, this ongoing strain and pain leads to a dislike for near work and can and will appear as reading and learning difficulties, headache, and other medical concerns, even emotional lability. Astigmatism is a leading cause of misdiagnosed reading and learning disorders. There is currently no requirement in the DSM-5 to assess vision function prior to diagnosing or prescribing for ADHD or learning problems. Learn more about refractive states and astigmatism at visionmechanic.net. Thanks for watching.
Hello again. Welcome back. Once again, I'm here with my good friend Robert Constantine, the Vision Rehabilitation OT. Welcome, Robert. And I'm Dr. Charles Boulay. We're here to talk about a topic that is core to vision science, core to human vision, core to rehab, and it's one of the most misunderstood or just simply not understood principles of human vision, and that is refractive state. We're going to talk about nearsightedness, farsightedness, astigmatism, and a little bit of extra information at the end on some different cases. Okay, so first of all, we're going to begin with the practical. I've got three lenses here, and these lenses represent optics that correct for one condition, but if you apply it to somebody who doesn't have a condition, it mimics a different condition. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. This is a plus lens. It's a plus lens. If I hold it in front of my eye, you can see that it makes my eye bigger. Why don't you hold on to that? Okay. What do you notice about this lens, Robert? Is it as thick in the middle as it is on the edge?
So yeah, this has a really thin edge on it. This has a thicker middle. And again, as you put this up, this makes the universe bigger as I bring this towards my eye. This makes things bigger. This is similar to a magnifying glass. You might see my eye getting bigger as well.
Things are getting bigger. What do you notice about the clarity when you hold it in front of one eye, close the other eye?
Things get a little blurred here, particularly at a distance. Like this, we're looking at the camera. This looks a little blurred.
Up close, your hand should be reasonably clear.
My hand looks wonderful. It looks like I have something under my fingernails.
Okay, we can discuss that later. Let me take that lens back from you just for a second. So, as I was saying, if a lens corrects for one condition, it simulates the opposite condition. This is a plus power lens, and so it corrects for farsightedness, but it simulates nearsightedness when you put it over an eye that is otherwise normal or neutral, okay? And so let me give you that one back. I'm going to take another one. Here's another lens. If I hold it in front of one eye, you might notice that it makes the eye look a little bit smaller. Okay. And Robert, I'm going to give you that one. You just hang on to that and compare the middle and the edge. Is it at the same thickness throughout the lens, or is there a difference?
So this one again, we're back. This one has a nice fat edge. You can see the edge on that one. Much thinner in the middle.
Okay.
Much thinner in the middle as we do that.
So it's thinner in the middle. Thinner in the middle, we call that concave. There's, an old sort of rhyme or rule that we can think of a dip in something in a mountain as a cave. So if there's a dip in the middle of the lens, if it's thinner in the middle, then it's a concave lens. But really what's most important here is that it's a minus power lens. Why don't you go ahead and cover one eye and look through the lens the other eye? What do you notice about that, Robert? Are objects in the distance blurry to you?
Objects in the distance are blurry. And,
are they the same size as they would be
everything
normally?
got smaller.
Everything got smaller.
Everything got smaller.
How does your eye feel as you're looking through that lens?
It's not a comfortable feeling. You can feel it kind of working a little bit.
There's some strain.
Filling my head up there. It's
Absolutely.
not digging this at all.
Some asthenopia, some retroorbital pain, or some discomfort behind the eyes, in the forehead, between the eyes. Okay? And the nature of this pain, this discomfort, Robert, is it comes from muscular strain. Okay? And the nature of the kind of discomfort that we feel really depends on what's going on with our eyes and whether our eyes are properly compensated for their refractive state. Let me also add that it's not just a matter of giving you a lens to make you see better at distance. We need to also take into account your tasking. What are you doing with the lens? If you are set with the lens for clear distance viewing, but you're working at a computer all day, especially Robert at a certain age, we feel that strain, and so we need a different optic for a different purpose. We can't look at bacteria through a telescope. We can't look at the moon with a microscope. And so we really need to take into account proper optics for the tasking, not just set everybody for distance. Children in particular, office workers, we work up close, and so we should take that into account. A child in particular. What is unique about a child is their size. And so a working distance for me is about 40 centimeters, or 1'4", 16 inches. And for a child, it can go down to 20 centimeters, okay? The difference in focusing power needed that and vergence strain, bringing the eyes together, is very different than for an adult. Let me take you through these one more time. I'm going to get back to this lens in a second. We have, on the one hand, a plus power lens, a magnifying lens. It makes my eye look a little bigger. When you look at the side of this, Robert, when you look at the side of my head through that lens, it appears to be magnified, a little enlarged.
It appears to get bigger, right.
Okay, when I take this minus power lens and put it in front of the eye, what happens to the side of the head?
So just the opposite. As we look through the lens at the side of the head, it looks smaller.
Okay, the side of my head should appear to be shrinking in. I'm going to throw in some video demonstrations along with the video so we can show that. And then likewise with the plus power lens, it makes the head seem to spread out behind the lens. This is a nice little parlor trick for you, Robert. You can sit around someplace in a market or a mall food court, something like that, and just scan people's glasses. And you can tell what kind of eyesight they're dealing with by the nature of the optics viewed through the side of the lens on the temple. Does it make the temple enlarge out? Well, then they need plus power. They're likely to be farsighted. Okay? Does the lens make the eye look smaller on the side, Robert? If it makes the eye look smaller, then it's a minus power lens, and then these people will see fine up close. They're nearsighted, but they won't be able to see well at distance. They'll need that power lens, that diverging lens, the minus power lens, to open up their distant point of focus to see in the distance. Let's go through these one more time from a slightly different perspective, from a behavioral perspective. How do these things impact on us as humans, and how does correcting for it impact on us? Before I go into that, I'm going to mention one thing about this third lens. Robert, you mentioned that this lens, this concave lens, thin in the middle, thick on the sides, right? I'll give you that. This is the convex lens. It's thicker in the middle, thin on the sides, okay? It magnifies. It gives me more vergence power so I can bring my focus nearer to me. This lens brings my focus away. It moves the focus away. We need to move that far point of focus away from us to the horizon if we're nearsighted. Let me give you that back. Well, what do you notice about this guy, Robert?
So
Let me take those
this
from you.
lens. So we have an area here that's fat. We have an area here that's thick, and then on the edge we have a thin area, and middle. It's hard to tell if it's thicker or if it's thinner. The edge is definitely very
This lens
unique than the others.
is a mix of these two lenses. Okay? This is a thin convex, thin on the edge, fat on the edge here, a concave lens. This is both. It's effectively a folded lens, an astigmatism lens, or a toric lens. Sometimes, Robert, it's hard to tell if it's got variable thickness on the edge when it's in a frame.
Right.
So how can you tell if a lens has astigmatism correction in it? I'll show you right now before we move on to our other discussion. When we look through a plus power lens, it magnifies, but if I rotate the lens, the image remains the same. Why don't you give that a try, Robert?
Okay.
You just rotate that around and you tell me, look at that camera.
So
The image remains the same. If we take this minifying lens, this minus power lens, the concave lens, and we look at a target and rotate it around, what do you notice?
Well, we see everything gets smaller through the lens, but as you rotate the lens, the image in the lens still stays in the same place. It's not getting distorted or anything like that.
Okay.
It makes it smaller, which we would expect from this concave lens.
Let's go back to this one, Robert. I'm not going to do it. You just tell me what's happening. You rotate that lens out in front of you like that again.
So the first thing that I notice as soon as you put this up is this image, at least in this current position, looks a little long, like it's been stretched out this way. It looks a little
Compressed,
stretched. And stretched. So then as we turn the lens, as we rotate it, it now becomes sort of short and wide. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Okay.
I've never...
The image is shifting around.
Yeah, the image is moving around quite a bit as we
Okay.
as we rotate that.
This is astigmatism, Robert. In these two cases, what we call spherical refractive errors, nearsightedness corrected with a minus lens, farsightedness corrected with a plus lens. In both cases, we can make it so that the image is nicely focused on a single plane. And so our eye perceives a nice square image, if you like. Nicely, lines are all aligned as they should be, no distortion. When we look through here, the astigmatism lens, we have two planes of focus. This is a 2 diopter astigmatism lens, meaning that the planes of focus are in terms of light and divergence, bending of light, 2 diopters apart. I won't get into the detail of what that means in terms of actual distance, whereas in fact it depends on the distance that we're viewing. But the difference here, the key difference, is that rather than having one plane of focus, Robert, we have 2 planes of focus. When you have astigmatism correction or need for astigmatism correction, you will never see a clear image. Part of the image will be in focus, part of the image is out of focus. I want to turn now to the behavioral side of things, okay? And we're going to get back to this astigmatism lens. Robert, I want you to hold up that plus power lens for me now.
Plus power.
How did you know it was the plus power lens?
So thicker in the middle, thinner on the edge.
Thinner on the edge. Does it
Right.
magnify or minify? Does it make a
And
bigger image or a smaller image?
It magnifies things. It makes things nice and big.
Excellent. And can you see clearly at distance with this lens?
With a distance, we're a little blurry, but
Can you see your hand?
really see good up close.
Okay, so again, your eyesight with your glasses, you're basically neutral at distance. Putting a plus power lens turns you into temporarily a nearsighted person.
A nearsighted person.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does it feel to look at your hand, for example? Just look at your hand.
So you really see a lot of detail.
Does it
in my
strain you
hand.
to look up close?
It's not too hard to look up close.
Bring it in a little closer. That starts to strain. But out here someplace, that's pretty comfortable for you.
Yeah.
Remove the lens for me. Keep your hand there. Remove the lens. What happened now? It's harder to look at it, isn't
Right.
it? Yeah, you feel more strain. This is the benefit of the plus power up close. It relaxes accommodation. The eyes physically relax. It's like standing and then sitting down, for example, Robert.
Right.
The eyes physically relax with the help of the plus lens, which does some of the accommodating, some of the focusing for us. It's like having a boost, okay? And so when you remove it, you're removing that boost. Now your eye has to do all the work and you physically feel it. This is a 2 diopter plus lens. which gives you a nice boost up close. We're going to repeat this activity, Robert. I'll take that from you. I want you to find that minus power lens, that -2. These are all at 2 diopter. The plus is 2 diopters, the minus is 2 diopters, and the astigmatism is 2 diopters, okay? In this case, we've got the -2. It's thick on the edge, thin in the middle. Robert, I want you to, without the lens, just look out at your hand for me. How does that feel?
We're comfortable now.
It's mostly comfortable in a certain range for you down there. Keep your hand there. Go ahead and add that -2 lens to it. How does that feel?
So this causes a lot more discomfort up close, and even that the minus lens in general is causing me like.
So the minus
Not my
lens
favorite
is
thing.
adding accommodative strain. It's the
Right.
same as moving your hand in closer without the lens, mind you, okay? So it adds strain. You have to overcome the strain of this lens and then focus up to your target. If you remove the lens now, what happens? It feels nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels much better. And then it's even nicer, Robert, if we add that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That relaxes.
So as I took this away, my instinct was, let me tilt my head and get my nice plus lenses, bifocals.
Right on.
Get that plus lens of my glasses back in there and help relax this, make this feel a little bit
So
better.
as therapists, look for head posture. Are we wearing glasses? If we're tipping the head up, okay, watch for that. It's almost always a matter of improper prescribing in the lens, or the frame is too big, Robert. People have to reach into that reading zone to see up close. So for lack of a proper frame, the chiropractor makes all kinds of money off of us. So
Right.
just watch for that. So again, going back to the food market, in the mall, you can watch people. What are they doing with their glasses? Are they lifting up? Or here's another one for you. Let me give you a quick quiz here, Robert. You see somebody in the mall and they're reading with glasses on. This seems kind of normal. Are they nearsighted or farsighted if they're reading with glasses on?
They're going to be farsighted.
At least neutral or farsighted.
least
If they're a
neutral,
little
farsighted.
older, probably, they need a little boost because of age. But if they basically tend to wear glasses for up close, definitely you need a boost. Either a little farsighted, or if you're older, you're going to be neutral. Okay. Now let me give you another quiz. You walk in and you see somebody perhaps in around our age, okay, and their glasses are on their head and they're reading comfortably like this. What's going on there, Robert?
So this is going to be a nearsighted person.
Right on.
They're going to be seeing up close.
Beautiful. This is the same as if you're neutrally sighted and you're wearing a plus power lens. It simulates that near sight. It's very annoying for distance viewing, television driving, but these people have a distinct advantage for what?
When it comes time to read, when it comes time to do writing, all of our learning is happening right here in front of us.
Let's get back to hyperopia or farsightedness in just a moment. We're going to start with the foundation of emmetropia, neutral sightedness, looking at distance. There's no effort required to see clearly at the horizon. Okay, so if we take a plus power lens and we put that in front, suddenly our distant point of focus becomes closer to us. We can no longer see at distance, but we're very relaxed up close. Okay, so myopes, people with myopia, Robert, tend to be much more academically inclined. And this is not a matter of intelligence, Robert. It's a matter of doing what we're comfortable doing.
All right.
Vision is the number one thing that we adapt to in terms of how quickly we adapt to it and how pervasively we adapt to it. If our vision is off, we adapt to it. We walk around with a head tilt, we squint, we kick our head back. We do all kinds of things to adapt to our vision. We do it unconsciously. Okay? If you see a child who is looking at books up close and doing so very well, and then they squint when they look away, there's a couple of possibilities. Most likely they're a little bit nearsighted, but they also might be showing signs of what we call near work-induced transient myopia, or NITM. Okay, and then this is a muscle strain thing. If we take the child outside, their eyes relax, and then the myopia seems to disappear. Okay. In most cases, nearsighted children definitely do better in school. I mean, on average, as trends, when you look in universities, there's more nearsighted people there. Farsighted kids tend to get missed for different reasons. We'll get into that in just a moment. But nearsightedness is kind of a nice thing to have, especially after mid to late 40s, 50s. Nearsighted people are very comfortable reading. It's kind of nice to be able to do that and put glasses on to see at distance, but always be able to read without glasses, which is a great boost. When you put a lens on to correct for nearsightedness, it adds a strain to your near vision by pushing it to the distance, okay? And that's certainly correcting for nearsightedness is part of the equation here. If I correct for nearsightedness, Robert, I use a minus power lens. And what did you say the minus power lens does to the world as you see it? Makes it look...
the minus size makes it look
smaller.
Right.
Okay, we're going to get back to that. Let's move on to the hyperopes, or the far-sighted people. Far-sighted people, their sight is balanced not to the near, not to the distance, but beyond the distance. In physical terms, it's a virtual distant focal point, and it's behind you. And in this case, we need to pull focus to bring it to the horizon, and then we're going to pull focus to bring it to our target. So hyperopes, people with hyperopia or farsightedness, they get the double whammy. They have to pull focus to the horizon, and then they must bring focus up close. A farsighted child can read easily for a time, but you will notice, Robert, depending on the level of farsightedness, you will notice that there's some strain, fatigue, crankiness, and it all depends on the tasking, the level of farsightedness, and of course different aspects of what's going on with the child's life. But as a rule, farsighted children will find tasking up close annoying. They're going to be irritable. So children with farsightedness, they find that near work is toxic in a way. It's a strain. They avoid near work. And also because of the strain, the constant nagging, it's like somebody's poking you in the shoulder all day long, Robert. At a certain point, you're going to reach a boiling point. So certainly oppositional behavior, defiant behavior, emotional outbursts, and lability. These are common with children with hyperopia and astigmatism. And this is because there's a constant strain on the vision, on the muscles of the vision system. And we've spoken of the near triad before, Robert. If a child especially has too much uncorrected or undercorrected farsightedness, it drives the eyes in because of the constant focusing strain, drives the vergence process, and these children can end up with eye turns. And in some of these cases, rather than simple vision rehab and lenses, they end up in surgery.
Right.
I have seen some amazing work with different people. My good friend Kurt Backstrom, for example, in Federal Way in Washington, taking deeply embedded esotropes and pulling them right back out using all kinds of fantastic techniques, non-surgically. It's fantastic. But we can avoid a lot of these things just given proper stimulus from the start, okay? I'm going to get back to prescribing limits in just a minute, but I want to talk about astigmatism. Astigmatism is very much like farsightedness in the classroom. Kids with uncorrected astigmatism, uncorrected farsightedness, they struggle, they have headaches. Academically, they struggle. Health-wise, children with uncorrected farsightedness and astigmatism tend to end up in extended healthcare services for diagnostics, CT scans, MRI scans. I've seen farsighted children, very high astigmatic children diagnosed with autism. I question the qualifications of the people that rendered that diagnosis. But just to give you an idea of how deeply affecting these refractive conditions can be. I haven't even touched on suppression yet, but it's definitely especially with farsightedness and astigmatism, you can have deep suppression in one of those visual channels. Ideally, they're both balanced. If one eye is affected even, you can forget about depth perception, spatial relations, motor targeting, this kind of thing. We must start with clear reception of a signal, what we call visual signal acquisition. That signal must be optimized to hit the retinas clearly so that the signal can be sent to the different visual processing centers of the brain. Okay, so if I was going to ask you, Robert, we'll move into a little bit of a quiz mode again.
Mm-hmm.
Here, first of all, we'll ramp this up. I'm going to load this task for you.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a lens. And you describe that lens to me now.
All right. So this looks like our toric or our astigmatism lens. Got the fatter side, got the thinner part here in the middle. You know, I hold that up. I see that long, thin image. As we rotate it, it becomes a wide, thin image. So this is going to be the
astigmatism lens.
The astigmatism lens.
I'm going to add a couple of quick notes on the astigmatism lens here, Robert. You did a great job, absolutely. It's very uncomfortable to look through uncorrected astigmatism. When you correct the astigmatism, like when you correct for other refractive anomalies, it changes the size of space. Okay, it compresses it in one direction or another, or it enlarges it. The astigmatism lens has a power, but it also has an angle to it, and that's what you're getting when you rotate it. And so we're going to take a minute and we're going to look at a refraction strip, an autorefractor strip, and we're going to show you what happens here. I'm just going to show you up here. There's the first number that you're going to notice here. It's the spherical value, Robert, and it's a value that indicates which of these two types is it. Is it nearsighted or farsighted? And then that would tell us the kind of lens we need to correct for that spherical element. The second numbers here, one is a power, and then you also notice an angle. And you'll notice that in this sample here, for example, the farsightedness is pretty low. The astigmatism is substantial, and I'm going to describe this in just a moment. But you also notice that there's an angle to it, and I'll circle those for you. And those angles remain fairly constant. That angle, Robert, changes depending on accommodative strain. When I see a child who comes in with very high astigmatism and the angle remains constant, that tells me that the accommodative system is given up. There's no effort to pull focus, it's just sitting there. It's basically dead in the water.
Right.
Because the astigmatism is so deep, such a wide range of images between the two planes of focus, that the eye cannot even hope to try and resolve a clear image, so it sits there waiting for something to happen. A couple of things about that, and that leads me into just, we're going to finish this discussion here. That difference of prescription, a high prescription, is absolutely relevant. When we have a very high prescription, a differential of prescription between the eyes, or just an extreme astigmatism in this case, we refer to this as anisometropia. Aniso meaning not the same, and metropia or measurement of the refractive power of the eye. This is really relevant, Robert, because as we mentioned, the astigmatism, it gives us a distortion on an angle. And if we correct that with the lens, it gives us a different kind of distortion. With the other lenses, the plus power, the minus power, Robert, if I'm wearing these two lenses, you can see from the magnification,
Right.
one eye is smaller, one eye is larger. Mm-hmm. As I'm looking at you and the world through this setup here, there's a 4 diopter difference between these eyes, okay? And with that comes a 4 diopter difference in magnification. So, very important, if we are correcting eyes where there is a significant power differential between the eyes, very important to consider what's called balanced lenses. But because they tend to balance out the image magnification, Robert, left and right, we can also call them isoconic lenses.
Oh.
That situation where we have a difference of magnification between the eyes makes spatial resolution, spatial calculus very difficult. Sets us off balance. There's all kinds of trouble with reading. I mean, forget about computer work, okay? That situation is called anisometropia. We can compensate for the differential in magnification between the eyes using balanced lenses. One of my favorite providers of these is shawlens.com, okay? And just accommodating for the differential in magnification can be enough to boost a light amblyopia, for example, a couple of lines on the chart.
Oh, very nice.
Okay. Uncorrected astigmatism, very uncomfortable. It doesn't take a lot, Robert. Anything beyond 3/4 of a diopter of astigmatism should be corrected for near work.
Right.
Okay. This is a plus power lens correcting for farsightedness. Okay. As a rule, if a child is having trouble with developmental concerns, I would look at compensating anything from a +1 and up. Okay, anybody with a 150 or a +2 prescription definitely should have something compensating for near work. And I'm talking about from a young age. If they're reading, they should be compensated during that reading. Farsightedness is a little more complicated in that we offer simple correction for low amounts for tasking, for certain tasks, near tasking. Beyond about 2, and certainly in my case, beyond about 150, 175, I would recommend almost full-time compensation. Robert, imagine walking around with this -2 in front of your eye all the time. That's a constant, significant strain. It's very uncomfortable. Now, for a child, they can see well enough to go without lenses, which is a real problem for parents sometimes. Well, my child sees fine. But the fact is they're walking around with this ongoing strain. It affects everything from appearance of health conditions to mood, irritability, concentration in the classroom. Okay, that's farsightedness. I would correct anything. Again, if it's for reading purposes and children, I would be cautious with anything uncorrected below 175. Okay, astigmatism 0.75.